Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be doing my 2024 reading wrapped, I guess. These are going to be all the books I read last year. I originally filmed a tier ranking video for this, but it took quite a long time and I didn't feel like it got what it should have got out of it. So I'm refilming and I'm just going to kind of briefly talk through the books, give like a sentence on each book, and I think at the end I'm going to try and give you a little list of the books that I would recommend you reading. So this last year I read 75 books and then I DNF'd 2, and then there was one other book that I'll talk about when it comes up that is a bit I don't know how to describe what my reading experience was with that book. We're just going to get straight into it because I don't want this video to be too long. So the first book I read this year was The Grace Year. I gave that one 3.5, and at the time I wasn't obsessed with that book. I didn't particularly love it, but looking back I do think it's a really great story. It's kind of a bit witchy and it's still young adult, but it's got some more serious topics in it as well, and honestly I'd love to see that book become a film. Then I read Normal People by Rooney. I rated it 2.5 stars. I just didn't love this book. I didn't really connect to the characters very much, and the whole book I just didn't want them together basically. So if you don't want two people together that are constantly being drawn back to each other, you're just not going to enjoy the book. That's just the way it is, and I think I just have this issue. I've come to realise that if I don't connect, I'm not going to like it, and maybe some people can kind of separate that, but I can't for some reason. So then I read Things We Left Behind, so the third book in the Knock 'Em Out series, and I think it's my favourite of the three. I gave it 5 stars. It was my first 5-star. I'm not sure if I'd stick by that now, but I might reread that series and come back to that. But I did really like it, and it was definitely my favourite of the relationships. Then I had another high rated book, which was Beartown. I'm not gonna talk too much about this one either because I think it's been really popular and talked about a lot recently. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really love this book, and my mum is currently reading it. It's taken her a year to get to reading it, but I've been telling her she needs to read it. Honestly, this is one of the books I just recommend to any reader. It's not literature that's difficult to understand or you have to put a lot of thought into it. His writing is still very unique. I want to read the next book this January, so hopefully I get to that. And then I read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This was another 3.5. I did quite like it, but I think I liked it more for Holly Jackson's writing rather than the story. The story was fine, but I didn't find it high stakes, even though it was a high stakes situation. I enjoyed it, but there was nothing special about it. Okay, and then after that I read Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing. I think that's right. This was Matthew Perry's memoir. I don't rate memoirs, as a lot of people don't, just because it doesn't feel right to me, but I was disappointed by this memoir. I really love seeing people's stories, but I did find some of the language and his inner thoughts, I guess, I just didn't it just didn't sit right with me. It was, to be a bit more specific, not that I'm trying to pick out the bad parts, because I really enjoyed his story and it was very, very eye-opening. Just the way he spoke about some of the women in his life just felt a bit off to me. It wasn't even necessarily, I don't think he even knew he was doing that, but yeah.
I'm just gonna take a sip because actually maybe I'm not, because it's really hot. My mouth is going dry.
Okay, so then I read Addicted to You. I give it 4 stars. I honestly don't really know how I feel about that book. It was good, and I definitely want to continue the series. It was also so easy to read, but honestly a lot happened in it, so I can't really say anything more than that. Then I started the ACOTAR series, and I gave ACOTAR 4 stars. Why do I keep saying oh my god, can I stop? I did like this book, but it obviously isn't my favourite. Can I seriously stop? I need to train myself not to say it's the first book in the series, so it's kind of a bit more of like a build up to the rest of the series, but honestly I don't feel like I need to say anything else, because if you haven't read Akatar yet, you need to, but I really don't think there's that many people in the booktube community who haven't read it yet. And then I listened to The Inmate by Freida McFadden. This is the book where I don't know how to categorize how I read it, because I listened to the first about 2 hours of the book and somehow skipped to the last half an hour and didn't realize until like a couple minutes before the end of the book. I didn't rate it, obviously, but I did kind of read the book because I know what happens in the end. So I'm going to count it as I read it. I probably would have liked it. I probably would have given it like a 3. Then I read Powerless by Elsie Silver. This was a 3.5 and my least favourite so far in the series. I just didn't particularly like Jasper, and I wasn't expecting that because I'm a hockey romance fan, but I just didn't really like him, and it just kind of ruined the romance parts for me because there was some really cute moments. And then I read Magnolia Parks. This was a 4.25. Looking back, I think it might be a 4, but I did enjoy it. I was expecting to like it a bit more just because a lot of people with similar tastes to me like this one, and also I'm from London, so I kind of like seeing London in books. I have, honestly, if I'm being honest, I have different feelings about Magnolia since reading Daisy Hates, and it's kind of hard to like Magnolia now, so looking back I can't really remember the positives, but I know that I did like it. Oh, I know I like Tom England, that's for definite. I loved Tom England. And then I read The Family Game. This is honestly one of the ones I'm gonna like higher recommend. I only gave it a 3-star, but it was a really like fun mystery thriller read. It's about a woman who is married, I think, to a man who's in a very wealthy family. They have an estate, like a big mansion on it, and it kind of has like Knives Out murder mystery vibes. I'm going to leave it at that so I don't ruin anything, but honestly the whole premise of the book is just really fun and I was really captivated. I just think I predicted quite a bit of it, that's why I gave it 3 stars, but looking back I'd probably rate it a bit higher. So this is one I would pretty highly recommend, especially if you like Knives Out. Then I read When in Rome. This was one of my more disappointing reads of the year. I had such high expectations because The Cheat Sheet was one of my favourite books like 2 or 3 years ago. I loved it. I might not feel the same way now, but I did love it. And lots of people love When in Rome as well. So I was really looking forward to it. I just didn't really like either of the characters very much, but I found the male main character wasn't like, I don't know, he just wasn't very nice, and that just kind of ruined it for me, to be honest. But I did rate it 3.75. I might move that down at some point, but I clearly liked it somewhat. Then I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This one was another 3.75. I also might move this down just because I literally don't remember anything from that book, apart from like her arriving at the house. This whole series is good. I do like it. I just think I might be a bit too old for it. Then I read Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. This was a 3-star. I read this book out of order. I read the third one, which is set in Santorini first, and then Love and Gelato I read second. Basically, I've just read them by when I went to those countries. So I went to somewhere in Greece, it wasn't Santorini, and then I went to Tuscany, and then I went to Dublin, so I thought I'd read Love and Luck. It was a 3-star, like it was good, but there's nothing really to speak about because I don't really remember much of it. It's probably my least favourite of the 3. Maybe Love and Gelato is definitely the best one. I'm not sure I'd recommend this series though if you're 20 or above. Then I read With Any Luck, which which was part of the Improbable Meet Cute series, I think. I honestly don't remember what this is about, and I didn't rate it, so I'm just gonna check quickly on my iPad. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is like based around a wedding, I'm pretty sure. This was okay, but like it wasn't amazing. I read better novellas throughout the year than this one. Then I read The Hawthorne Legacy, the second book in the Inheritance games. That was a 4.5. I really liked that one. I just remembered kind of what my feelings were about this series. I did find so much of it predictable, which is, I think, really uncommon. From when I was reading the reviews, no one really found it predictable. But I don't know why, because I'm normally really bad at predicting things in books. I just found it really predictable. I just predicted everything, but I still really loved it. So she's clearly a great writer. And this book was just a lot more action packed than the first book. Then I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This was a 3-star because it wasn't bad. I have such mixed feelings about It Ends With Us, which is a whole nother story. I didn't love It Ends With Us, that's my point, but I wanted to read the next one just so I could say that I was finished with the story. I don't regret it, but it didn't add anything to the book. It just kind of felt like a novella, or not even a novella, like an epilogue of the first book, but just really long, and it wasn't really needed. So in my last video, I think I talked about the Pretty Little Liars series, but this was the in-between book, like kind of novella, but it's quite long. It's like a Christmas book, and it's called Pretty Little Secrets. I gave it 3 stars. I just really like that series, but I gave it 3 stars because it was okay. Then I listened to the Manningtree Witches. This one, I don't even know if I rated it. I didn't really like it, to be honest. I can't remember too much about it. I remember the audiobook was kind of hard to listen to because the accents were really thick. Like it was Essex accents, but set in the past, if that makes sense. So it's not the current Essex accent. It was a lot stronger. So it was a bit hard to follow along. Not that I didn't understand them. I will say that this book was quite eye-opening, and it did have some real elements to it about Manningtree in particular, which is a town in Essex, or maybe a village. I can't remember his name, but the really famous witch hunter. I think his name is John something, or Tom. But he is like a prominent character in the book, and it's obviously based on him in real life at that time. So I am glad I read it, but I didn't enjoy it necessarily. Then I read In the Weeds, which was another really disappointing book for me. I give it 2.5. I just did not like their romance. I kind of did like both characters individually, but when they were together, I just didn't care about the relationship at all. And that was really sad because I really liked Love Light Farms, and the world that it's set in I really love. I just didn't love it, and that's all I have to say. I think it was a me problem. So yeah. And then I read How to Sell a Haunted House. This was one of my dad's recommendations, and obviously Grady Hendrix is like a very well-known and well-acclaimed author, so I was looking forward to reading one of his books. I kind of I liked this book, but it's a horror, and it's not the most realistic horror. So then it wasn't scary. Then I had to rely on the other aspects of the book, if that makes sense. I haven't read many horror books at all, but I do like horror, and I do particularly like paranormal stuff. Like I love Ghost Hunters. That's one of my favorite shows, which is so random. So I think maybe this year I might try and read some more paranormal books, but I actually think I might be a bit scared of them, so I don't know. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. And then I read I'm Glad My Mum Died, kind of similar to Matthew Perry. With both of them, they're people that I obviously grew up with. Friends is kind of different just because it's obviously always on, you kind of just have it in the background, but Chandler was one of my favourites. With Jeanette McCurdy, obviously she was in iCarly, and I am the generation that grew up with iCarly, so I was really excited to read her story. There's two things that I want to say about this book. One is that as someone from the UK, not many Mormons around here. I don't think I've ever met a Mormon. So learning about that and like growing up with Mormonism was very interesting. And then also there were still aspects of her that weren't like the best. And I don't think she denied that, to be honest. But there was some points in her relationships where she was definitely as much of an issue in her relationships as the other person. But that doesn't mean she's a bad person, and it's part of life and it's part of her story. So I liked reading about that. Then I read One of Us Is Back. This was a 3-star. Honestly, it was very middle of the road. It probably didn't need to exist, if I'm being honest. I read the first book obviously a few years ago now, and I did quite like it. And the second book is pretty good considering it's just kind of a new set of characters, but this one just felt unnecessary. I think it was the characters from the first two books like all meshed into one book, and yeah, it just didn't feel like I needed to read it, but I wanted to finish the series. Then I read the second book in the Avatar series. I read Court of Mr. Fury. This was a 5-star. This is technically my only 5-star of the series, but I'll get into that later. I just really like this book. The first like 20% I was really confused where we were going, but after we got past that I really liked it. So this is probably my favourite of the series. So then I listened to Paris Hilton's memoir. This might be my favourite of the ones I read this year. I think when you look at Paris Hilton, you would assume that she had like a pretty easy upbringing. Obviously, she's part of the Hilton legacy, but she talks about that in the book and how maybe it's not what you would think. She's just always someone that I've really liked, so I definitely went in with kind of that preconceived idea of her, which I did with both the other ones too, but in particular Paris Hilton. Her story is just not what you would think at all, so I would recommend this one quite a lot actually, because she talks a lot about dealing with loving your parents when you know that they did something that's traumatized you. And yeah, that is kind of, it's deep, but she talks about it in a way that it doesn't feel that deep until you kind of look back and think about it. What she went through still is happening today, so very eye-opening. Then I think listened to Cultish by Amanda Montell. I just read this because first of all I love the cover. That's why I like noticed it in the first place. But I am quite interested in cults and that sort of thing, so I wanted to read it and get a bit more of an understanding from someone that has obviously a lot more knowledge on it than I do. I did find a lot of it very like eye-opening again, but I think some of the stuff I just wasn't really thinking. Like, I know that cult is a very broad word, which was something I learned from this book, but some of the stuff that is technically considered a cult I probably wouldn't consider a cult, but at the same time it did just make me think about everything, because people say like cult following, you know, Taylor Swift's fans cult. Technically the definition of a cult, Taylor Swift fans are a cult, but I'm pretty sure anyway if I got that right. But in my mind I wouldn't call any like fans a cult, so I found that all very interesting basically. And it was also quite cool to hear some of her more personal stories about cults. Honestly, it was really interesting, and I'm glad I read it, and I would want to read more books, maybe more specific, in the future. And then I read A Court of Wings and Ruin. This one was a 4.75, and that's just because I took so long to read it. When I read it, as soon as I read it, I was like, I think I like this one more than A Court of Mist and Fury. And then I was like, no, I still don't know which one I like more, and then obviously I finished the series, so there's more contenders now. But I did really like A Court, Wings and Ruin, and I liked that it wasn't as, like, it was just a lot more serious, and I did quite like that. Then I read Happy Place, which I wouldn't say it's a disappointing read of the year, but I think this is pretty much everyone's favourite Emily Henry book, and I already have like different tastes to people because book club is mine by far, to be honest. And most people it's either Happy Place or Beach Read, and I do love Beach Read as well. But Happy Place, I didn't love it. I can definitely see why so many people love it because it's a very emotional book, and it's honestly it's maybe a bit more of a relatable book because not many people go and have relationships like Gus and January or Nora and Charlie. Like that's not well, it's an ideal relationship in a lot of people's minds, but it's not like the normal thing. Whereas in the Happy Place, their relationship or the end of their relationship might be a bit more relatable, and then obviously the friendship element as well was a lot more strong in Happy Place. So yeah, I rated it 4.25. It just took me a really long time to read, which is not like any other Emily Henry book for me. I've always gone through them pretty fast. The whole book, I genuinely thought maybe this isn't a romance, like maybe this is her first literary heartbroken read, and at the end, like towards the end, I was like, this is not a romance. Oh my god, I've gone through this whole book being like, is this a romance? Is this not a romance? And I was like, this isn't a romance. To be honest, I know that people aren't going to agree with me, but I think, was it Win? Yeah, I just didn't feel like Win actually cared about getting back together with Harriet. You could tell that Harriet really wanted to get back with Win, and there was still love there. To be fair, you could see that from both sides a little bit, but that was hard for me to get past, and obviously Win had a reason for that, but I just didn't feel like he wanted to get back together. And then I read the reappearance of Rachel Price. This was also I don't know what that was, also 3.5 stars. I kind of preferred the storyline of this 1 to 5 survive, but again, I just think Holly Jackson is quite good at like writing. She's just quite good at writing, full stop. The story was fun and like interesting to read about because obviously you don't really know who to trust and stuff like that. So yeah, I just didn't love it. I didn't really enjoy it, so that's why it's a 3.5 rather than a 4. Then I read Love Redesigned. This one was a 4.5. One of my favourite romances of the year. I just really loved it. Like Lauren Asher, I feel like is becoming one of my favourite authors. I like her like family elements of her book, which I'll talk about again later. I just feel like she writes that really well. And also with this one in particular, I did a degree in real estate and like I'm very interested in houses and development and stuff like that. So I just really love the whole premise of the book because obviously they're redesigning a house, and that's something I love and I'm so interested in. So it was just like a perfect romance for me. I think it wasn't a 5-star just because I wasn't sure. But I honestly don't know. I can't remember why it wasn't a 5-star. Maybe I just didn't get that feeling. And then I read A Court of Frost and Starlight. This one I read in Mexico. So I want to start out that because I read it at the complete wrong time of year in June in Mexico. So don't recommend reading this one in the summer really. I give it 3-star. It was cute from what I remember, and I think I would have liked it more when I was a bit more cozier, but I just didn't love it. Then I listened to The Raven Boys, which was another 3-star. I read this because I think Rachel Catherine really recommended it. I honestly just found it so hard to follow along on the audiobook, and maybe the actual book isn't like that, but I think there's like magical realism in it from what I remember, and I just couldn't follow along. But I could tell that the actual book was pretty good, which is why I gave it 3-star. I just honestly I had no idea what was going on. Could definitely see the potential in this one. I don't think I'm going to continue the series, but I could if I wanted to. I might have to reread this one first. Then I read Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This was a 3-star. Honestly, I had such low expectations going into this that if I didn't, I might have even rated it lower. But I did find some positives in this book. I know most people didn't really like this one, and I am someone that loved Every Summer After. Like, that's one of my favourite romances. This one just did not have the same... It had a good story between the two characters, but the situation in which it all happened was not ideal. I will say I did really like the rest, like the other half of the story that wasn't about the romance, the whole like running the hotel resort kind of thing, I really liked, and the whole situation with her mum as well. Then I read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This was another one of my dad's recommendations, but I obviously wanted to read it in Mexico. I didn't need to. It was another book that probably would have been better suited to like autumn or winter, but I did enjoy it. I think probably is classed as a horror, but it's kind of like a bit, it's not sci-fi. I don't really know how to describe it. Magical realism maybe. Anyway, I give it 3 stars. I also read Gods of Jade and Shadow by this author, and I really, really loved that, surprisingly as well. I really loved it. I just had I never like heard anyone on BookTube talking about her, so I wasn't expecting to love that one, and I did. So I recommend that one. This one I'm not sure I'd really recommend, but I am glad I read it. Then I read Funny Story. I gave this one 4.25. I obviously liked it more than Happy Place. Actually, I rated them the same, but I think I might move Happy Place down to a 4. I really liked Funny Story. I think the 2 characters in their story was really cute, and I really liked both characters. They were both very likable. There was one thing that really like put me off the guy, I've forgotten his name, but it was, this is a spoiler warning if you haven't read Funny Story, but I'm not going to go full in depth, so don't worry if like you don't mind like a little bit of a spoiler. So towards the end there's a point where he doesn't turn up, basically. He doesn't, he just makes no explanation for it, and it just kind of put me off that character because it was just so unnecessary. Like, I know it's just a book, but it's really not that hard to just text and be like, sorry, I'm not gonna make it. Like, it's really not that hard, and it just honestly just put me off him. I still thought the ending was cute. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Then I read Powerful, which was a 4-star. This one, honestly, not much to say about it. It's obviously a novella, and I think a lot of people have read this series now. But I loved Powerless, and I did really love this book as well. I loved being with the new characters, and I can't remember his name now, but the main guy, I really liked him, and I really hope that we get to see some of him in the 3rd book, because I don't think he was brought up in the 2nd book. Honestly, I just liked it. Like, it was good. Then I read Summer Sisters, which was a recommendation from Destiny, I'm pretty sure. This was kind of a random pick for a book, but I enjoyed it more than I thought. I gave it 3.5 stars. The story basically follows a girl, I think it's definitely in the past, and her best friend, and they go to the best friend's house every summer, and they just form like a really close friendship. And honestly, if you want to go look at Destiny's video where she talks about this, she talks about it better, but it was very like relatable in a way. The friendships that you make as girls when you're younger, like sort of 8, 9, 10, like it's just so relatable for me anyway, and it's just sweet to like read something that you relate to from your childhood. Yeah, I did like it, and I would recommend if you would want to read something like that. The book becomes a lot more complex as you go on though, and there were definitely some moments later on which annoyed me, but not like in the sense that the book annoyed me, in the sense that I was kind of connected to the story and the characters. Then I finished the Inheritance Games series by reading The Final Gambit. I gave this one 3.5 as well, and kind of like the first one, I don't remember what happened in it, but I know that I enjoyed it. I don't know which I prefer out of the first and the 3rd one, but yeah, I know it was good, so I would recommend that series, I guess. Then I read, or I listened to, I think, Stalking Jack the Ripper. This one I gave 4 stars. I did really like it. There's another book later on I'll talk about, and then I'll kind of talk a bit more about this one maybe in that little book bit. And then I read How to Solve Your Own Murder. This one was a 4-star. I read it because I was going to a book event that Kristen Perrin was in. This book was really good. Like, it was a cozy mystery based in English countryside, so I really liked that. And yeah, it was also, I just really liked it. Like, it was nothing special, but if you're looking for a mystery, it's not outright a cozy mystery, but the setting is quite cozy, if that makes sense. And there's a bit of like psychicness to it as well, which was fun. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Then I listened to Better Than the Movies. This one I gave 4.25, but I think I would probably move it down a little bit. It was another one that I was a bit disappointed by just because everyone loves it. I would have loved this if I read it when I was like 16. I think just looking at from an older perspective, there was some things that I didn't like, particularly the male main character. There was one moment where I just kind of was a bit put off by him. But they're teenagers, so the way that they act and stuff is very much in line with being a teenager. And obviously I'm quite past that now, especially past being in school, obviously. So I think I would have liked it at that age, but looking back, I'm like, that's a bit immature. But it's meant to be immature. Then I listened to Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This one is a really conflicting one for me, to be honest. I did like it, and I liked like listening. It was kind of like listening to an older sister tell her life story and give you advice. And I particularly liked the end where she kind of looks back at her 20s and like what she's hoping for her 30s. I thought was really nice. I think I have a bit more of a unique perspective for this book just because I grew up very near to where Dolly Alderton grew up, and we have very different lives considering we live like, well, we don't live anymore, but we would have lived so close to each other. Obviously she's older than me, so she grew up in a different like time to me, but I just found a lot of the stuff she said was unrelatable when they obviously should be relatable because I grew up so near her. I don't want to go too far into it. I just think her upbringing and like where she went to school and stuff did affect how she viewed relationships in particular, and that's the whole point of the book. It's everything she knows about love and it's her experiences. I just didn't relate to a lot of them, and I don't think in the same way as she thinks. I just found that part of it a bit difficult, but I am really glad I read it. Then I read The Fury. This was 3 stars. I read The Silent Patient and I did not very much enjoy it. And this one I enjoyed a bit more, but I still didn't really like it. Alex Michaelides, I think that's how you say his name, writes very like unlikable main characters, and I think that's the point. You're not meant to like them, but in this specific book, something happens to that character, and you kind of just be like, oh, who cares? Like, I don't care. So I kind of, yeah, I just didn't care. And that's all I can say. Then I read Reckless. I give it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I think I did put it off a little bit because I saw other people's thoughts, but I really liked it. I do definitely understand where people are coming from because not much happens in this book, and there's kind of a lot more. There's not a lot of romance, but there's more romance than the first one, and there shouldn't be given the circumstances, if that makes sense. But I did really like it, and the ending, definitely I was not expecting that. Then I read The Perfect Couple by Ellen Hildebrand. I gave it 4.25 stars. I read this like just before the TV show came out, so it was really good timing. I really liked it, and I definitely understand why people rave about Ellen Hildebrand's writing because it's just really like relaxing almost. Then I listened to Hunting Prince Dracula. This was the second book after Stalking Jack the Ripper, and I gave it 3 stars, but I think I would actually give it 2.5 because I didn't really love it. I found it a lot harder to follow than the first one as well on audiobook, and yeah, the romance, not that there's a lot of romance, but there just wasn't really any. And yeah, that's all I can really say. I don't think I'm going to continue that series. Then I read Some of Broken Rules. This was a 3 star, kind of in the same boat as Better Than the Movies. I think I'm just a bit old for this book. It was cute, but I actually found with this one in particular, the characters, it's meant to be like a young adult, maybe new adult book, but the characters went from feeling very like juvenile to like kind of not explicit, by no means explicit, but like in my mind the difference was so big in what they were like acting like in one moment. and then in the next moment it just felt a bit all over the place. Like, yeah. Then I read The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I give it 3.5 stars. This was another one that I really liked from this year. I really liked the setting. I think it was in Tuscany again, but it was in like a villa, obviously, and it's about two friends that go on this trip, and I think they're both authors and they're both writing their books separately, but then they kind of come across a mystery and it's kind of following that. So I really like that one. Then I read The Exception to the Rule. I think this was also in the Improbable Meet Cute series, but I might be mixing them up now that I'm thinking about it. This one I liked more than the other one. I thought it was quite cute, to be honest, and if it was a more full-length book, I think I would read it. So yeah. Then I read Nora Goes Off Script. This was the 4.25 as well. I really liked this one. I definitely get all the hype with Annabelle Monaghan because her books are like kind of similar to Ellen Hildebrand in a way. They're very easy to read. They're kind of summary and literary fiction. They normally have a bit of romance. I think Annabelle Monaghan has a bit more romance in hers, but yeah, I just really liked it and I would definitely recommend her, but I'm sure everyone's heard that already. The one thing I didn't like as much was that it's kind of similar to in Happy Place. Towards the end I was like, I actually don't know if this is a romance, maybe this is just a literary fiction. So that was my only like criticism. Then I listened to A Novel Love Story. This was Freida. I think honestly I feel the same as like everyone else I've seen feels about this book. It has a great premise. It just, I don't know, I just did not connect to the characters at all. And then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is a 4-star. I really like this one, and this is one that I would recommend if you're not completely into literary fiction but you want to give it a go, because this one isn't too literary, if that makes sense. It's kind of like short stories within the big story. It was very cozy and the stories that you read are quite eye-opening as well. So yeah, I'd honestly just really recommend that one. Then I read Reckless by Elsie Silver. This was a 4.75. I can't even really remember why I didn't give it 5 stars, so in my mind it's kind of a 5-star read. I just love this one, and you can look at my bookstagram if you want to see a bit more of a rating. I think I talked about a bit more on there, but I honestly just really related to winter. Then I read The Crimson Morph, which I feel like everyone read, but the hype is like real. This is a really good book. I rated it 4.5 stars. It's just like, it kind of has similar vibes to Powerless in the way that it made me feel, if that makes sense. So if you really liked Powerless, I would definitely recommend The Crimson Moth. I just really like, it was just really fun, and I also really liked the like era of time that it was set in. So yeah, I just really liked this one. Then I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This was another 4-star, and I really loved this. Like, I think I read it in 2 days. I was not expecting to love it. It's got very long chapters, but you're kind of so like engulfed in the world that you want to read on to the next chapter, so you end up reading like 200 pages and it's only 2 chapters. It's just very, very mundane, but it kept me so like, I was so enthralled in the story even though nothing was really happening. So it's another one that I'd recommend if you want to get into literary fiction, but it's definitely a lot more literary fiction than Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Then I read Binding 13, which I obviously have a whole video on, but I gave it 3.75. All my thoughts still stand from that video, so you can look at that if you want to know more in depth. But I did like it. There was just some aspects that I found it a bit hard to get over. Then I read Story Life of AJ Fikri. This one was a 3.75 as well. I did quite like this one. I really liked the message of the book, and that's kind of what made me give it a higher rating at the end. I just obviously didn't particularly connect to the characters, as it seems I have an issue with, but I will say that the kid in this book, I really liked her little point of views. Then I read Like a Charm. This was a 3.5 or 3.25, I think. It's very small, and honestly I liked it. It was good, but it was not amazing. I did really like the setting though. It was in like a Scottish town, and also the family aspect in this book was really good. Then I read These Hollow Vows, which was a 4.25. I surprisingly really like this. I went in thinking I might not, but I did. I have a video where I read this one, I'm pretty sure, so I won't go too in depth again, but I'm really excited to read the next one in the series. Then I read Anatomy. This was the one that kind of had similar vibes to Stalking Jack the Ripper for me, but I much preferred the mystery element in Stalking Jack the Ripper to this one, and I also did not particularly like the romance in Anatomy either. Then I read The Confession by John Grisham. This was my first John Grisham read, and I really wanted to read one of his books last year because one, my boyfriend really likes his books, and also he's very well acclaimed, so I wanted to give him a go. This book, I'm glad that it was my first book, and I found it really like eye-opening as someone that does not have to worry about or really even think about the death penalty and capital punishment because of where I live. This whole book is very like eye-opening, so I would recommend if you're interested in something like that, but it's obviously very sensitive topics as well. And then I read I Know What You've Done. Again, I talked about this one in a different video, but I gave it 3.5. I really liked the multiple point of view in this book and mystery, and I also really like the setting of Brighton. Then I read Court of Silver Flames, the last book in ACOTAR. This was another 4.75. Again, it just took me so long that I felt like I couldn't give it a 5-star, and again, I don't know where I'd rank it in the whole series. My kind of final thoughts are that I really liked the book, but I think I mostly liked it because I liked Nesta and I could relate to some parts of her. And maybe if I didn't feel that way, I'm not sure the whole book would have been as enjoyable for me. Then I read What Lies in the Woods. This was 3-star. Honestly, I don't really remember what happens in this book. I remember being quite intrigued for the first half, and then there was just so many things going on towards the end. There was like multiple things you needed to solve, and then there was multiple people involved. It just got a bit hard to follow, but I did enjoy it. Then I read My December Darling. This was a 4-star. I honestly was surprised that I loved it as much as I did. Again, I just loved the characters and the family in this book. Lauren Asher really writes family really well, and it was just cute. Like, that's all I can say, but honestly, I really recommend it for a Christmas book. It's really cute. Then I read Wicked, which I talked about in my series video. This one was a 3.25. I can't really distinguish what happened in this one versus Killer, which is another one that I read, which I gave 3.5. They're just good books. I really like the Pretty Little Liars series, but obviously I don't think many people want to hear about that. So let's move on. And then I read Let It Snow. This was a 3.5. I liked it a lot more than I thought it would. My mum gave it to me for Christmas last year and I wanted to give it a go. It was cute. I did listen to it and I found that the male main character's voice actor, or I think it might have been the same voice actor but just a different voice, I can't remember. I just found it a bit hard to like find him cute. Maybe that's a bit mean, I don't know. But yeah, I thought it was a good book and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Then I read A Curse for True Love, which was a 5-star. This was honestly so surprising for me, and again, you can watch my thoughts in the series video that I posted, but I really liked it. This world is so like magical and fairy tale-esque, and I just really like that, and I'm gonna miss that because I don't think there's too many books that are like that. And then I read The Couple at Number 9, which was one of my mum's recommendations. This one I gave 3-star. I did quite like it, but there was nothing particularly different about this book than other like mystery thriller books. So yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts are. I still thought it was a good book though. Then I read The Christmas at the Island Hotel, I think. I gave that 3 stars as well. Both Jenny Colgan books I've read have been very Christmassy and like they've really got me in the mood for Christmas. But I think she's one of those authors that I'm never gonna love her books, but I'm always gonna like them and they're always gonna put me in the Christmas mood. Then I read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This one was a 4.5. I really, really love this one. And again, it did make me dislike Magnolia Parks a bit more. I really like Daisy's point of view, and I loved Christian so much. Like, I feel like most people like BJ or Julian, but I love Christian. It was just really fun to see like a bit more of an action-packed version of Magnolia Parks, if that makes sense. So yeah. Then I read Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. This one was kind of cute, but like I didn't massively love the story when I thought too much about it. It was obviously a novella, so I kind of didn't look too far in, but it was cute enough. And then the last book I read in 2024 was In Holidays by Christina Lauren. This one I didn't really like that much. I gave it 2.5 stars. I just didn't really like the romance. I feel like it could have been better and I might have liked the story more, but I think Groundhog Day is just not for me. Those are all the books I read this year. Then I had 2 DNFs, which were A Perfect Vintage. This was a Haley fan recommendation, and I thought the premise sounded really good. I think it was a wedding planner who goes to is it called a chateau? I think it might be called a chateau in France, and she takes her niece along with her to like get her to have like a fun little summer in France, but it just got a bit weird. Basically, the family that live in the house already were there, and the main female character was having like a bit of a thing with 2 of the characters. It's kind of hard to explain, but she's having a thing with 2 of the other characters that were in the same family together, and then her niece was also having a thing with one of those characters that was her age, so it was appropriate. The female main character is obviously not really age appropriate for that person, and also that's just not appropriate when your niece is like having a fun time with someone and you're thinking, oh, I kind of like that guy too. That's your niece. Like, what is wrong with you? So yeah, I just found her really gross, to be honest, and I just couldn't get past it. I did want to know how the story ended, and I kind of wanted to carry on, but she just really disgusted me, which is one of the strongest like things I've had about a book. But yeah, I just couldn't get past that. And then the other one was Hex Appeal. This one, I just felt like nothing was happening. I got halfway through and literally nothing had happened. I also found we were starting to get a bit of a romance and I just didn't really like it. So I just felt like there wasn't any point in continuing that book. So yeah, those were the 77 books I read in total. I'm going to put like a little thing here of the books. I might do like the 15 books I recommend the most. And obviously these aren't going to be necessarily my highest ratings, but they're the ones that I would want people to go away and think, I kind of want to read that one. That's the end of my video. I'm sorry, I know it's going to be a long one, but hopefully some new people might find this video because I know I love reading. I do love reading. I know I love like watching end of year wrap ups from everyone. I'm looking forward to a new year of reading and some more videos. And yeah, thanks for watching.